This is the J. Scott Outdoors podcast on Western big game hunting and fishing, brought to you by GoHunt.com Insider. Research faster, hunt more. Go to GoHunt.com/insider and join today. I'm your host, Jay Scott, and I live and breathe hunting and fishing, spending half the year in the field experiencing God's creation. I hope you'll enjoy hearing about our adventures. Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today I have Craig Steele with Exclusive Pursuit Outfitters on the phone, and we are going to be talking about the 2015 fall Arizona Desert Bighorn Sheep draw. And Craig is a friend of mine and a local in Kingman, Arizona in Region 3 and knows all those units very well. Craig, how are you doing this morning?
Doing well. How are you, Jay?
I'm happy to have you on here, and let's dive right into Desert Bighorn Sheep. Craig, Region 3 is an area that you live in and grew up in and shot your own personal ram in. For those of the listeners that don't know, Region 3, the northwest part of the state, is Nelsoni sheep, and in the southwest and around the Phoenix area and in southern Arizona, you have Mexicana sheep. And the main differences between the two is the Nelsoni are known for the flaring horns. So the Mexicanas are much more tight to their face and have that round curl where the Nelsoni flare, and it gives people a real unique opportunity in Arizona, in my mind, to hunt two different types of sheep that have two totally different looks. And Craig, what year did you shoot your personal ram, and what unit was that in?
That was 1992 in Unit 15D, which is now, that side of the road would be 15D North as the units are marked out now.
And what changes have you seen in 15D since, as being a little boy, with the creation of the highway and Union Pass and dividing that highway? What are some of the things that you've seen change in your area over the last, say, 15, 20, 30 years?
Well, probably the biggest is just what you said, Union Pass, which runs Highway 68. From Kingman to Bullhead City, Laughlin, Nevada, is now a divided highway through Union Pass, and there's 10-foot tall fencing, and that's a natural crossing for the sheep. They started that project, I think, in 2000, and those sheep used to cross over from D North to 15C South a bunch, and, you know, in fact, I missed a ram right above the highway, and you don't see those sheep there. Something that I found out over the last couple of years and through visiting with you as well is you don't see those sheep around that highway nearly as much. And another thing is on the north side of 15D is the burn that happened in the Secret Pass area. A lot of that black brush is all burned out. Which is actually good, especially for those sheep eating that grass. It makes it a lot easier to spot the sheep as well in a lot of that country. And then probably the third factor is that they split the unit. Now you have D South, which is primarily the Warm Springs Wilderness. It's basically a big giant mesa with canyons. It's more, it's not as treacherous terrain is what's in D North, but it's a little bit harder to get to and harder to cover. And typically there's a lot of opportunity to pack in and hunt on that. And obviously on the D North side is just the amount of tags that they have in there on just the D North side is probably I would say the biggest changes with regards to that unit.
Yeah. The interesting thing about 15D is you've got, down on the Colorado River where you've got an elevation of, 500 or 700 feet, and it goes all the way up to the top, of Mount Nutt, right there. I want to say it's like 52 or 5,300 feet. So I could be wrong on my elevation as far as the 500 to 700, but it seems like there's a huge variance in from the river all the way up to the top. And it doesn't seem that there's that many units that have that big of a contrast. I want to talk about my top 5 sheep units for Mexicana and my top 5 Nelson Eye sheep units, and I'll also get your top picks as well. Starting with my Nelson Eye sheep units, and these aren't necessarily in order. This is my top 5. I kind of like things about this entire top 5. You've got 15D North. 15D North this year has 8 tags. That means that with 8 tags, there are 2 tags that can go to non-residents. In 2014, the rams that were harvested, there was a 163, a 160, a 167, a 158, a 172, and a 169, a 158, and a 149. 2 rams in particular there. Dar and I were in 15D North as well as you and Lee were in 15D North with Linda Kelly. And you guys shot a fantastic ram last year, as well as Dar's client, Bob O'Connor, shot a great ram as well. The interesting thing about 15D North, in my mind, is it has tons of sheep, and I believe the last several years in the surveys, they're surveying close to 500 animals from the helicopter in 15D North, and that's one thing that makes that hunt very, very special with the amount of sheep. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's really, the sheep are stacked up in there. That north side has really got a ton of structure as far as rocks and unique canyons, and you look at it, and from my perspective, I'm like, geez, man, there's 8 tags, and how can sheep survive? As far as not necessarily sheep in general, but big rams, how can it continue to produce big rams like that with the amount of tags that they have? But the reality of it is, like my dad told me, those big rams sometimes just hold up in a little hole, and a lot of guys kill the first couple days, and a big ram pops out later in the hunt. Nobody's around to kill him. But yeah, I think that unit is stacked full of sheep. It's a fun hunt for me personally to guide in, and I think it's also a fun hunt if you drew your own tag in there. If you're willing to, if you don't have the scouting time, if you're willing to wait, and basically hold off, you're going to see a ton of sheep and a ton of neat country. So it's definitely been the unit that's been producing the best quality sheep up here and the most amount of quality sheep. So
yeah, we hunted it pretty hard for 3 years, Dar and I, in 2011, 2012, and the 2013-14 Arizona Super Big Game Raffle Hunt. The first time we hunted in there was with Donnie Young, and we basically got to spend the whole month of October in there, and it was phenomenal to watch those sheep really rutting. We had just incredible action. I think we saw over 100 and some rams that year, and then the following year with Larry Spillers from Texas, we also hunted in October, and then of course in the 13-14 season in October. Actually, Claude showed up, I want to say, the end of October, early part of November. Claude obviously shot that 185-inch, just giant ram that turned out to be the largest Nelson I ever shot in the state of Arizona. One of the interesting things about that, as many tags as there are in there, it's hard to believe that a ram of that size kind of slipped through the cracks, and really nobody that I know of had seen that ram, and you have to figure that he was there the whole time. And it's kind of exciting to know that a ram like that could just show up. And that's one of the beauties of 15D North, is that there is some rugged, there is some remote country that, potentially there can be some rams that can, get away and hide. I mean, the ram that Bob O'Connor shot last year with Dar, it's got 31 inches of flare, and that ram certainly has a unique look. And then that solid, stocky ram that you shot with Linda, just that heavy, carries this mass all the way through the horn. It's just nice to know that rams like that can still be still come out of a unit that has 8 tags.
Yeah, it is. I think as we kind of analyze what, as far as looking at rams and stuff like that, if I'm really being blunt and honest, is there's 8 tags, and let's say 3 or 4 of those are being guided by a guide, and then the other 4 are not. Typically, what usually happens, and this has happened forever, is a lot of people either get frustrated or they don't know exactly what is a good sheep, as far as size-wise and age-wise, because they've never looked at them. And I think sometimes those hunters go in there and they smack the first decent ram that they see because for whatever reason. And I think we kind of break it down as like, man, if all 8 hunters, put in the effort we do, then, there's no reason there should be a leftover ram. You know what I mean? But the reality of it is a lot of people, just don't have the time, or they don't put in the effort to be able to capitalize on that. And they may not know, you know what I mean? It's really hard to look at a sheep if you've never looked at them. It's kind of like antelope. A lot of people don't know exactly what a big antelope is, and it can be very deceiving, especially in D North, when you're going to see, it's a guy looks at a 155 ram with a nice full curl, it's going to be hard for him to pass on that ram,
I hear what you're saying, but playing the devil's advocate a little bit, and I'm not picking on any one particular person, but having the 2014 recap in front of me, the reality is we have to lay off the 5 and 6 year old rams.
Yeah,
I mean, the reality is people that draw the tag, and there are some people that are limited with mobility because of different issues or whatnot. But in my mind, there's really no excuse for shooting young sheep. They can go to the Desert Bighorn Sheep Clinic. They can go on, ORGHUNT.com. They can go on JScout Outdoors. They can go to resources where they can learn to count rings. And, in my mind, shooting 5, 6 year old rams is, and under is there's enough older sheep out there. If people would spend a little bit of time learning what, makes a, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old ram, I think they would realize that, getting antsy and shooting a young sheep is not the way to do it. And I see it every year. I'm looking through the, 14, 13, 12, 11 stats, and, there's 3, 4, 5-year-old rams on here. And I just want to tell the people out there, not coming from a standpoint of an elitist or, anything like that, but just from a conservation standpoint, guys, let's harvest the older age class rams. And if it is your first hunt, contact someone before the hunt that can help you determine what makes an older age class ram. And, look for that distinguishing mark, that 4-year ring mark, and then count from there and make sure that you, have 3 age rings towards the skull, towards their head from the 4-year-old distinct line.
Yeah.
And I think if more people would do that, one, we would be shooting the older age class rams and letting those younger ones grow up. Enough of that. There's I could go on.
The
and on
average.
about that.
I would just real quick to recap on that. There was 8 tags. The average amount of days hunted last year in 15D North was 4.8 days out of a 30-day season. So
Yeah,
the reality,
to me, yeah, go
the
ahead.
reality of it is guys have plenty of time. It's a once in a lifetime experience, and you need to take your time on that. So that's what I have to say about that. You need to take your time on that and not get in a rush.
Yeah, and to me, a desert sheep tag in any case, rocky or desert, that's a once in a lifetime. You are only going to get that hunt once, and it never ceases to amaze me how many people are done on the first day. And I have no problem being done on the first day when you've scouted and you've done all your hunting before season and you've been watching a ram and that's the ram you harvest. But so many people, and I've talked to a lot of people that in their heart they're a little bit bent out of shape, that they rushed themselves and that they just shot, they whoever was going to come help them didn't show up, and mentally they get drawn down and they just, for whatever reason, in the first or second day, any decent round that they see, they shoot. And I would just encourage you to, put your efforts in and really try and spend as much time as you can hunting these animals, because it is a true blessing to get to be out and get to hunt these animals. And, being done on the first day, in my mind, is okay if you have huge time constraints and, but why not take, 10 days and really look at a bunch of rams and try and enjoy the whole process. And everybody has a different, vacation schedule and what have you, but this is not just a deer hunt that you'll draw every year or every other year.
No.
Interesting looking at the base sizes just randomly here in 15D North, 15D North. Looks like 14 4/8 to 15, 14 7/8 to 15, 14 1/8, 14 1/8, 15 1/8, 15 1/8. That Bob O'Connor ram that went over 175 gross. The Game and Fish checked it in at 172 7/8. It had 15-inch bases. Looks like the Game and Fish had Linda's ram at 14 3 and 14 6. To me, the interesting thing, the contrast between Bob O'Connor's ram that was 38, 39 inches long, Linda's was 35 and 34 and had smaller bases. But the interesting thing, when we had those two rams together, Linda's ram carried its mass all the way through the horn and down to the third quarter measurement. And it's just interesting to see two rams that score so closely together can be two totally,
in the same unit.
in the same unit and virtually pretty close to where, living, as the crow flies. I'll bet you, there wasn't, 3 or 4 miles from where we shot the rams, and have, that's a good point. Sheep can score the same and have totally different configurations. I would encourage people when they draw a sheep tag to become a student of the game and really dive into all the aspects of sheep scoring. And we're going to do more podcasts and episodes here this summer on how to score a Desert Bighorn sheep. Moving on, so my top 5 Nelson I picks are not top 5. 15D North, 15D South, 16A, 15C South, and 13B North. Let's talk a little bit about 15D South. In the 2012-13 Arizona Super Big Game Raffle, we actually harvested Larry Spiller's ram in 15D South. And 15D South, one of the interesting things is there are a ton of burrows in 15D South.
Yes.
There are a ton of burrows in 15D South. Like you said, it's the Warm Springs Wilderness area. There, the thing I do like about the unit is that there is basically blacktop road that circles the entire unit. There are some not as good of access points as there are in 15D North. But for someone that's willing to walk and get away from the roads, there's quite a bit of country there to hunt.
Yeah, it's a neat piece of country. It's probably it probably is my favorite piece of sheep country, just because I feel like I'm in another world when you hike up in there, and that's the awesome part about it. I love that. I love that unit. I love the it's like you said. You look at it and you're like, man, there's blacktop all around it, but then it's just a big essentially a big mesa.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big rock for sure. And in 2014, there was a 148, a 169, a 164, and a 153 harvested out of there. This year, they have the same 4 tags in there as well. 16A is also a unit that is very intriguing to me. I've spent some time in there, and in 2014, a 171, a 159, and a 156 was harvested out of there. One of the interesting things about 16A is it is a huge unit. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is a gigantic unit. There is not a lot of sheep, and, the 3 years that we did the Arizona Super Big Game Raffle, sheep tag guided for that, we would be in close contact with the Game and Fish in regards to their aerial surveys that they did. And I can remember a few of the years where they flew and they saw 4 sheep total in the whole unit.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit disheartening when there's, qualified people up in a helicopter and they're just flying all over, and you after the survey they tell you there's 4 or 5 sheep that they saw. Interesting that, they have 3 tags in there. They went from 1 to 2 to 3, and they've had it, at 3 for, I believe, 2 years. And you ask, well, if they're not seeing them on their surveys, how are they accounting for these sheep? They've been running some trail cameras there, and then they get the report from the hunters as well. And the unit is so big and vast that there are sheep, and it would be very difficult to survey all of the sheep in that unit because there are so many different mountain chains. But that also brings up a mystery for me, in the fact that I think out of any of the Nelson I units, that is one unit that I think, some giants could come out of there. I mean, 2 years ago, Matt Dominy guided for that ram that we looked hard for on the raffle hunt that, scored 180, and 16A has that variable to it. I mean, there could be a monster anywhere in there because it's so big.
Yeah, it's like you said, and it's a different terrain, vast terrain. It is huge. It's scouting intensive. If you draw the tag or if you hire a guide, the guide's going to have to scout his butt off. And then if you have a tag, it's very scouting intensive, and or you're going to be there for a long time if you want to find the ram that's you're looking for, because it's like you said, it's vast. The roads aren't kind. It's just it's a task.
Yeah, I mean, it's a daunting task, and I mean, it's a unit that, you've got to have extra quad tires, extra truck tires, extra trailer tires. You've got to take gas with you. You're camped in the middle of, say you camp in the middle of the unit. Virtually anywhere you go, there's not much phone service.
No.
But, it's one of those units, like I said, that, there could be an absolute, a Matt Dominy type of ram that they got 2 years ago, 180-inch ram. Last year they got a 171, a 159, and a 156. And I'm looking at the 2013 stats, and
Yeah.
There was a 167 and a 169 when they had 2 tags. So I mean, the opportunity is pretty good for a decent ram. And another thing to note about 16A, it's has a few Mexicanas on the south end of the unit, and it's the only one of the units that are covered in the Arizona Super Big Game Raffle sheep hunt that has a few Mexicanas down there on that south end. So historically, the Arizona Super Big Game Raffle is a Nelson eye only, but if you hunt in 16A, there is a potential to get a Mexicana.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, I agree, and I think the thing about that is too, just like you're saying with regards low tag numbers, vast country. If you find a big ram, it's going to be the best hunt of your life because you're probably not going to have much pressure.
Yeah, you'll be the only one on them. Interesting thing to note, 15D North with 8 tags, 2 of those can be non-residents. 15D South, 4 tags, 1 of those can be a non-resident tag. 16A with 3 tags, 1 of those can go to a non-resident. The other 2 that I'd like to mention are 15C South. In 2014, the hunters got a 166 and a 160, and there's 2 tags in there. Again this year, I like 15C South. I think, like you said, with the creation of the Highway 68 and dividing it and Union Pass, I believe that 15C South does not get the cross traffic of sheep coming from 15D North, walking north into 15C South. 15C South lies north of 15D North on the north side of Highway 68. But I like the country in 15C South. You know, it's pretty big country. There's not a ton of sheep, but, you know, I think the potential for finding a good ram in C South is pretty good.
It is. I really, you know, I've talked to you about that unit. And over the last couple of years, it average score this last year was 163. The year before it was 167, and then the year before that was 163. So it's
going up.
Yeah, it's consistent. It's right in there with 15D North. There's just lower tag numbers. You're not going to see the sheep. You're not going to see a quarter of the sheep that you see in D. But it is what it is. You know, there's a chance to kill a good ram in there for the Nelson eye units, and like you said too, it's kind of a mix between. It reminds me of D South and D North combined, because on the west side you got those long canyons, rock formations on the southwest side, and then on the east side or on the plateau you kind of have benches with little mountain ranges, and I've been in there recently over the last week, and it's a neat unit. You're just not going to see the sheep that you would in some of the other units, but it's obviously producing some quality rams. So it's not.
Yeah, there's 2 things I'd like to point out. One is for the listeners out there, these units, 15D North, 15D South, 16A, 15C South, and then Craig's going to cover some others. One of the benefits, Craig, that you have is you live anywhere from 5 minutes to 30 minutes from all of those units. And so, you know, you're predator hunting, you're, just going out and messing around out in the desert shooting guns or doing whatever you're doing, you're in those units all the time. And you're, you could go out in an afternoon and scout, 15D North, and the next morning you could be in 16A, and then, that afternoon you could be in 15C South. And that, as a guide, that's definitely a benefit of living close to those units.
Yeah, it is. It's neat. It's pretty neat because I have sheep on one side, then I have giant elk on the other side of me. So it's one of those things where it's a real neat. I'm very blessed to be able to do that. And it's just awesome. And I think, I don't know if you want to go on to the next unit that you have. You're on 15C South, because your list isn't much different than mine, Jay, so far. Go ahead.
My next, one other thing I was going to point out about 15C South, like you said, in 2013, there was 2 8-year-old rams killed that scored 166 and 168 and 3/8. Both of those rams had 14 and 4/8 bases, and they were 35 and 35 and 6 and 34 and 7 and 34 on the horn length. One thing I would point out to the listeners is when you draw a sheep unit, you need to go back and look at, say, the last 5, 6, as many years as you can find. And what you need to do is look at the average bases. So what I just said in 15C South is 2013, both of the rams killed that were 166 and 168 had 14.5-inch bases. When you go to hunt that unit, you don't want to go in there and see a ram and give him 15-inch bases or give him 15.5-inch bases. You want to stick with what your averages are. So if you can find, say, the last 5 years of data, and then what I like to do is do an average of all those rams, unless there was a 3, 4, 5-year-old young ram that really skews the numbers, I like to average those numbers, and then I use that average number when I'm trying to estimate my sheep score, and I plug in the average base numbers. I don't like to ever go more. If it's bigger, then great. But if you start over calculating, you're going to throw your estimation on score way off.
Yeah, no, that is a really good little tip there that a lot of people don't look at. And you can get all this. All this is public information. Any of the state game and fish agencies have this stuff, and Arizona has it. It's all public information. So
yeah. And my last Nelson I unit that I'd like to mention is 13B North. They had 4 tags in there for a while. They have 3. Last year, friend Ryan Hatch harvested a beautiful ram. I think he grossed close to 175 and netted around 172 and 151. And then there was one ram that didn't get killed. I don't know the circumstance on that. I think the tag was returned. But that's up in the Virgin Gorge. You've got St. George, Utah, just north of the unit. You've got Mesquite, Nevada on the before the River Gorge there, the Virgin River Gorge. You've got just an amazing canyon there in the Virgin Gorge, and it's just a beautiful spot. You've got kind of the pink red rock in some of the rock formations, and there's some dang nice sheep in there. If you look at the 2013 numbers, there was 153, 163, 155. If you go to let's look at 2012 and see what they did in there. 2012. Looks like they got a 159, a 162, and a 163. I think the potential for a good ram, I believe 3 or 4 years ago they did get a 171 or 2 class ram in there. It's just neat country. What other Nelson I units do you have to add to that, Craig?
My top 5 I have all those same 15D North, 15D South, 16A, 15C South, 13B North. I think 15C North is another one that's a good unit. I think last night I sent you a text where that 180 ram, there's huge genetics in there. I think it's another good unit. But I prefer the ones that you said. I think those are the best units for me personally. 13B North, like you said, it's awesome country. It does produce good rams. especially if you work at it. I'm sure Ryan worked his butt off to find that ram. But for me personally, the scoutability of it is a critical thing. And on average, I really like C North or C South, 15D North, 15D South, and 16A. C North is a good unit, and it used to be, every year it used to produce probably the best ram in the region. For some reason, it's kind of tapered off. Although last year it did average, what did it average last year? Yeah, last year it only averaged 140 inches.
So, that might be a unit that if last year, they didn't do so well, you never know the circumstances. I mean, the hunters could have potentially, just shot the first rams they saw, which means that there could be, some of those rams with a little age on them.
Yeah.
And C North is an interesting unit because it used to be one of the best in the state, and, they've gone through some problems, but, and they've lowered the tags. So, that's a unit to watch in the next couple of years. If they've lowered the tags, there's potential that a few rams are slipping through the cracks and going to get some age on them and get some size to them. So that's definitely one to put on the radar.
It definitely is. It's one of those ones that you definitely want to put on the radar. 15C North and 15B West used to have boatloads of sheep and boatloads of tags, and there's been mid to 180 sheep killed out of both those units. It really depends. It's like you said, it depends. There's so many variables that go into that. All you can do is kind of look at the data and give it your best estimate. It just hasn't been as consistent as these other units. Another unit that, I'd like to just kind of touch, it's not a unit that I want to guide in or I want to, recommend anybody, but I kind of want to give people a realistic perspective because they'll look at it and they'll say, oh, there's one permit and 64 applicants, and that's unit 9 and 10. And the reason being is because that's the Cataract Canyon. And so before you apply for that hunt, you need to realize what you're getting into. It's basically a giant canyon, and if you shoot a sheep, you're going to have to hire somebody to rappel down and get that animal out of there. It is a very, very tough hunt. And
challenging. Very,
very challenging. So don't just apply for that. I see one year there was only 29 applicants. Understand the reason why there's that many applicants is because it's a challenging hunt. And it's one you want to make sure you have all your ducks in a row before you apply for that hunt.
Yeah, and I can remember a few years ago, Anthony Matthews out of Flagstaff, I believe Flagstaff, nice guy, drew the tag. And, when the Game and Fish was doing their surveys, he was up there glassing and kind of was in communication, to say, I'm up here during the surveys. And they went and flew their dang survey and didn't see a sheep. I mean, can you imagine the discouragement that you would feel if the Game and Fish is flying around for, full 6 hours in a helicopter and never see a sheep? But he ended up harvesting, I want to say, 165 or 66 inch ram. And there's been some other rams that have come out of there, but they move in and out of the Grand Canyon, and it's very hit or miss. There is a reason that they have allotted more time.
Yeah.
They give October, November, and December for the 9-10, the Cataract Canyon hunter. So you basically have 3 months. But I have talked to several people that have had the tag, and several of them shot the ram and had no way to get to it, and actually, like you said, had to hire people out of Flagstaff to come and rappel down and get the ram. So that is definitely one that, for the right person, if you're into adventure, maybe it's something you want to do, but make sure that your ducks are in a row before you go up there.
Yeah, no, you definitely do. I just wanted to brush on that. Other than that, man, I think you nailed the Nelson Eye ones, and that's exactly where I was going. So,
well, I think one other thing to note is people need to go to www.arizonasuperbiggameraffle.com. They need to purchase tickets for $25. The beautiful thing about the raffle tag is you get all year long. You get August 15th to August 14th to hunt, and it is an unbelievable tag. Dar and I were fortunate to guide 3 years in a row for the permit, and it's 3 of the best hunts, probably some of the best hunts I've ever been on, because you have all of these units that we just discussed. You can hunt all of them, as well as the ones we didn't mention, and you have a full year to do it. So you can, you can hunt the rams in the summer. You can hunt the rams, during the rut. It's just a phenomenal hunt and an opportunity to obviously raise money for the state of Arizona and have a chance to win an unbelievable hunt. So I want to encourage guys, $25, I believe, is one ticket. And, you don't have to buy 100 tickets to win. I think the 3 guys that we guided, I want to say 5 tickets is the most that one of them bought. I think one of them only bought 1 ticket, and I want to say the other guy only bought 2. So
yeah.
Someone's going to win, and you can buy obviously other species as well with the elk and the deer and bear and turkey and all of the other species. But definitely, if you're gonna, you definitely have to buy the Desert Sheep.
I'm buying it.
Ticket.
I'm buying it. I'm gonna win it. I'm gonna pull a Tom Blum, and I'm gonna shoot one with my bow. 20.
That's awesome. His ram is still. His ram was a giant. What did it score?
Well, actually, his bigger ram, Tom Blum drew is the only person I know of to, or one of the only people I know of to draw the raffle tag and then turn around and draw a general tag in the normal draw.
I didn't know that. So the giant that he shot was on his general tag.
Was on his general tag in 15D. He killed it in D South, but it was just 15D at the time. He killed his raffle tag ram, I think, in B West.
Wow.
His raffle ram was, I think, 160. His, game fish score. His D ram was like 177 or something, 178 gross, something, game fish score.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful ram. Okay, Craig, I appreciate all your insight on those Nelson Eye units. I want to cover the Mexicana units, and there's a lot of good tags here for guys that want to shoot a Mexicana ram. My top 5 units for size, just going for quality of rams year in and year out. My top pick, well, I believe that 22 and 24B South are 2 equal ties. There are 4 tags this year in 22. That's up 1. They've had it at 3 for several years. This year there's 4 tags, so they've added a tag. In 2014, they shot a 175, a 184, and a 171. In 2013, they shot a 180, a 175, and a 180. In 2012, I was fortunate to be in there with a friend, Ernie Maskey, and he shot 186 and an 1/8 net ram. 22 is just a phenomenal unit. You've got Saguaro Canyon and Apache Lakes that you can access the hunt area from. You can also, there are several access points that you can come in that aren't on the lake. But when you have the ability to go up Saguaro Lake, Canyon Lake, and Apache Lake and glass from the boat and then access some of the canyons and such, it's just phenomenally beautiful country, rugged country. I've seen some amazing things while scouting up there, and really like Unit 22. I'm not exactly thrilled with the fact that there's 4 tags this year in 22. I think, to be honest with you, I think it's going to be a little bit
rubbing shoulders.
Yeah, I think we'll be, rubbing shoulders a little bit, and it's a little bit unfortunate that, maybe splitting the units into a beginning or a, 1st of December, 1st to the 15th, and then the second half of December. Maybe that was a better option. I don't know. Obviously, the Arizona Game and Fish are experts, and they're very good at what they do, and they decided to do 4 tags. From a guide's perspective and from a hunter's perspective, I think there's the potential for, some arguments on the mountain. I think there's some potential for, it being a little bit stuffy. But with that being said, there's some fantastic rams in there. 24B South is a fantastic unit as well. There's 2 tags in there. That's remaining the same. In 2014, there was a 185 and a 174 ram. 2013, there was a 182 and a 186. 24B South over the years, has produced some of the largest rams in the state of Arizona. So as far as size, 22 and 24B South, in my mind, are a dead tie. Interesting, with the 4 tags in 22, there's 1 tag that could go to non-resident. In 24B South, with 2 tags, there's 1 tag that could go to non-residents. Both of those hunts, I believe, you could have a chance to kill a ram over 180 inches. And, there's not many places in the world that you can say that you have a chance at a ram over 180.
Is 24B South a little bit more rugged than 22?
I'm not going to say it's more rugged, but it seems like it has more country, and there are some very, very rugged parts of 24B South. The thing, 22 in my mind has every bit as rugged of country, but it also has the lakes where you can use the lakes to access into that rugged country. So if 24B South also bordered a lake, I think, maybe it wouldn't have the ruggedness and the mystique that it does. But with that being said, all of the wilderness area in 24B South, the Superstition Wilderness, there is some very, very rugged stuff. That brings me to my next pick, which is the 24B Wilderness tag. So there is 1 tag that you can, you have to stay in the wilderness area. So the 24B South hunters can hunt the South unit, which the wilderness is inside the South unit, and they can also hunt the wilderness, whereas the wilderness hunter has to stay in the wilderness. And in 2014, the hunter killed a 173. In 2013, the hunter killed a 179. The potential for shooting a giant ram is there in the wilderness. There's several ways to look at it. The 2 people in 24B South can also hunt the wilderness, and to me that's a little bit of a bummer for the guy that has the wilderness tag, but it is what it is. If you do put in for that wilderness tag, know that you have to be experienced. It's not for someone that just wants to day hunt. You got to be prepared to backpack. You got to be prepared to stay overnight. But the chances of shooting a big ram is very good. 24B North is a tag that I like. 24B North is, so when everything on the left side or the north side as you're headed up Saguaro Canyon or Apache Lake, everything on the left or the north is 22. On the right side would be of Canyon Lake would be 24B North. So on the right side or south side of when you're going upriver on Canyon and Apache, everything on the right would be 24B North. And 24B North is, I like it because there's only 1 tag. So non-residents are out. They don't have a chance to draw that tag. So it's a resident only. But, it has the chance of, there's big rams in there. There's a 170 was killed last year in 2014, and in 2013 a 179. And I believe in 2012 the auction ram, that went 185, high 185 ram was taken in 24B North, and it has some real rugged and remote country as well.
Yeah, that's a big giant ram. Gosh dang.
Yeah, it's a big ram. And then 44B North. 44B North is kind of dear to my heart. In 2009, I was in there with Glenn Hall, and Glenn harvested a beautiful ram with his muzzleloader, 176 and change. And it's a great unit. It has a lot of sheep. 44B North is very accessible by ATV or four-wheel drive vehicle. There's a lot of roads. It's in western Arizona, near Quartzsite, and I was fortunate to guide in there in 2010 with Ron Orndorfer, and he harvested a ram that we had nicknamed the Logo Ram, and we were able to get some nice photos and video of him. And then last year, Avery Elms, 12-year-old Avery Elms, drew 44B North, and she, 12-year-old from Oregon, just the sweetest young gal you've ever met, a lot of energy, just a real polite, great family, came down and hunted, and I was excited when I heard that she drew and when they booked a hunt with me, because there was a ram that we'd been watching for 5 years in there. Unfortunately, Avery was not able to come down to the unit until December 19th due to school. And so the other hunter in the unit, Travis and Troy, guided the other hunter, and, congrats to them. They harvested that ram, and, he went 182 or 3 inches, just a giant ram, beautiful ram. But, that's the largest ram to ever come out of 44B North. Mm-hmm. The next biggest was a ram right at 180 inches. So, it's nice to see units like that in western Arizona producing rams of that size. They jumped 44B North from 3 to 4 tags, from 2 to 4 tags. I don't like that move at all personally. I think 4 tags in there is going to be too many. I think, there's still a couple of good rams, but I think we're going to see the quality in 44B North over, when 4 rams get shot out of there, I think we're going to see our quality for the next couple of years decline. Hopefully they'll maybe drop it back down to 3 or even 2.
Did you guys see, I know the rams that you killed with Avery, did you guys see any rams that were kind of on the table as far as besides the ram you guys killed?
I would say we saw several comparable rams to Avery's. And I know there's one other ram in there that's bigger. I could never turn him up. I'm not sure if, late in the season like that, if he made a big move and maybe even moved out of the unit, I don't know. But, in my mind, the big ram that they shot last year is kind of an anomaly. It's a great unit, but 4 tags, 4 quality rams coming out of there this year. I'm nervous about what it's going to be. In 2013, there was a 174 and a 171, and I felt like if they would have just kept it at 2 tags, that it could consistently produce 170 class rams. And maybe this 4 tags will just be a 1-year deal, and maybe they'll go back to 2. But I'm afraid if they run for 4 tags a couple years in a row, there basically will be none of the older age class rams there left. I'm going to say some honorable mentions here. 3132 Aravaipa is intriguing to me, and I think obviously holds quality rams. 37A. Silver Bells, 37B, you've got over there by Picket Post. 28 has consistently produced some good rams. 44A West, 44B South, and 46B West. Those are all honorable mentions in my book. Interesting, speaking about 46B West, the Cabeza Prieta. Greg Coons, a good friend of mine, great sheep guide, veteran sheep guide, is historically known as the best guide in the Cabeza Prieta and has been doing it for years. You know, I was talking to him last night about the split of the Unit 46B West and East. You know, they split it from, you know, there's 4 tags and 4 tags, and they also split 46A into 2 units, and they added, you know, 2 and 2. One of the things that he's a little bit nervous about is that if you get rain on one side of the mountain range or the other, you could have potential where all the sheep are in one unit or the other, and that's a little bit alarming. So, you know, that's one thing to think about when you're putting in for the Cabeza Prieta for 46B West and East and 46A, the 2 splits there. You could potentially have one of the units way better than the other if the summer rains fall on one side of the mountain or the other. So that's something to think about. Oh, we've covered a lot of ground. Craig?
Yeah, no, that was good. That's interesting because, you know, I don't follow some of those units as much. So it's interesting to hear it from a perspective of, I guess, someone that's a little bit more green about those units. What about, I got one real quick question, because I was looking at, what about the 42/44A South hunt? Is what I don't know too much about. I guide a little bit in 42 and 44. I was just looking at the numbers real quick.
Yeah, I think the thing about 42 and 44 is they have harvested some great rams. Last year there was Steve Quinn, 172, Caitlin Farrington, 173, and I think, and then the 44A East, a 156. I think one of the problems is they've harvested some great rams, but they've taken, I think, in my opinion, the cream off the top. I was talking to Eric Hunt with Arizona Desert Outfitters, and that's right in his backyard in Wickenburg. And in his opinion, the cream has been taken off the top. I believe 2 years ago was the first year that the 42 was open, and you know there was a nice ram shot in there, and then last year 2 nice rams. From what I've heard, the cream has been taken off the top a little bit in those units.
Gotcha.
So I mean, that's not that people shouldn't put in for it, but if you're really searching out for that trophy ram, you know, you might be a little bit wary that they have shot some, you know, 170 class rams the last 2 years. And, you know, someone could look at that and say, wow, they're shooting big rams. But from what I've heard, the cream, you know, definitely has been sifted off the top there.
Most of the big rams, when you know, especially come from those guys or from us or whatever, there's a lot of effort that goes into it. You just don't usually stroll up there and, you know, find a giant ram. It's a pretty hard deal to do. So you're exactly right. That's one of the things I worry about a little bit with 15D North, as you and I have talked about. There is a ton of sheep in there, but just like 22, I wonder if they shouldn't have broke that hunt up in the 2 weeks, because I just think it lets off some of the pressure and just the number of tags that are concentrated on that side. Even though there's abundant amount of sheep, it is amazing that big rams still survive, but I just wonder how long it can sustain it, you know, after 2 or 3 years of being north and south, you know, how long it can sustain that pressure on the older age class rams.
Yeah, and you're talking about 15D North and 15D South, and you know, when it was all 15D, you know, 90% of the rams were always harvested in 15D North. Now that it's split with 8 and 4, 8 in the north, 4 in the south, what you end up getting is you get more of a constant pressure on the south unit than you had before.
Yes.
And so for the first couple of years, a couple nice rams get shot, but there could be a potential that 4 potentially could be too many, and you could really start to see the decline of older age class rams. That's yet to be determined, but that when the units were split, that was my fear. Now, when you take a unit, say like 22 that has 4 tags, you talk about splitting it into a first hunt and a second hunt. There's 2 trains of thought. One of the trains of thought is that all 4 people are going to go out. A couple of them are going to shoot on the first day, and there will actually be less pressure on a unit than if you have 2 and 2, where you have 2 concentrated efforts in a 2-week period of time.
Yeah.
And I know that from quality of hunt standpoint, I think splitting the unit into 2, a first hunt and a second hunt, I think you have a higher quality experience. Mm-hmm. I think one of the frustrating things not last year, but the year before, my friend Brian Remza had Unit 6A for Rocky, and he had the second hunt. Yes, he drew the tag, and, the odds were better for the second hunt, but the top 2 rams that we had scouted out and been watching, both of them got killed. So he ended up killing the number 3 ram, and I think that's one challenge with splitting the unit is the same people that do all the scouting. If you draw the second hunt, it's luck of the draw, and both of your big rams could potentially get killed.
It's hard to sit on the sideline and eat popsicles and watch the big rams die before.
Well, we were happy for him in the aspect that we wanted them to harvest the nice, older age class big rams, but obviously Brian had his heart set on a couple of the 2 that they shot. So, I've been in that boat, and it's definitely a hard one to watch. One thing I will point out is there's 117 total sheep tags. 17 of those are Rockies, 100 are Desert. 20% of the tags 20% of the tags go to max bonus point holders. Up to 10% of the tags can go to non-residents. So non-residents, in my mind, need to stay away from units that go to the max point holders. With that being said, like Unit 22 is a perfect example. It typically always goes to max point holders. Mm-hmm. So as a non-resident, that you definitely should get all the information from the Game and Fish, play your odds, check all of your information out. Craig, I'd like to ask you, how can people get a hold of you to talk about sheep in Region 3? And for the listeners out there, I highly recommend talking to Craig. He's energetic. He knows these sheep. He shot his own personal ram in Region 3. His dad shot his ram in Region 3. His mom shot her ram in Region 3. He lives right there. Craig, how can people get a hold of you?
They can go to our website, exclusivepursuitoutfitters.com. You can find my email there, or you can email me at craig@exclusivepursuitoutfitters.com. I'm all over the web. I'm on Facebook. Just search Craig Steele, and you should be able to find me. I'm the guy in the Kuiu gear. Or on Instagram. I'm on Instagram as well, and my name is Craig Steele AZ, so pretty easy to find.
And that's Craig, C-R-A-I-G, Steele, S-T-E-E-L-E-A-Z on Instagram.
Yep.
I want to thank you, Craig, for being on. I want to thank the listeners for putting up with Craig and I this morning and listening to all of these stats. I know sometimes it can be a little bit boring, but I think some people are going to find some value in it. If anybody needs to get a hold of me, they can go email me at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. They can go to my website, jscottoutdoors, my Instagram, jscottoutdoors. I've got a YouTube channel, as well as Craig's got a great YouTube channel. Craig, what's your YouTube channel?
Our YouTube channel is at ORGHUNT.com. You can just search ORGHUNT.com on YouTube, and it'll pull it right up. Well, I also have an outfitting one, but ORGHUNT.com is kind of the media outlet where I'm a publisher at. So,
okay, sounds good. And J Scott Outdoors on YouTube, J Scott Outdoors on Facebook. If you've got questions about the sheep draws, give me a call. I'm happy to field them. And I want to wish you guys the best of luck in the draws. Make sure you go out and get the Arizona Super Big Game Raffle. $25 tickets, buy as many as you can afford, and Craig and I both want to be guiding on that Arizona Super Big Game Raffle Desert Sheep Hunt. That's just a very enjoyable hunt, so if you fortunate and draw the tag, we would love to talk to you about your hunt and the opportunity to guide you. Yeah, guys, thanks for all the support with the J Scott Outdoors podcast. I want to thank GoHunt.com, The Insider, for their support and their sponsorship. And until next time, guys, God bless. Thanks for listening to the J Scott Outdoors Western Big Game Hunting and Fishing Podcast, brought to you by GoHunt.com Insider. Research faster, hunt more. Go to GoHunt.com/insider and join today.